At IAS 2022 in Montreal, PEPFAR and Global Fund representatives spoke and actually said they were going to be cutting funding. And there's not a specific timeline around it, but that they were going to basically have countries that receive funding to take more responsibility for it and sort of start offloading that. And I should note that no one reported on this at the time. It was sort of said, and in that session, immediately afterwards, people from PEPFAR recipients were saying, we need more money, we need more money. It's almost as if it went over their heads or they didn't buy it. And if you pay attention to what's been going on here in the States, recall in Tennessee that the governor rejected money from the CDC, and there was this sort of back and forth. We also saw last year a number of, I hate to say Republican senators or congressmen, but it was Republican members, legislators, who were trying to slash the HIV budgets in half. And we know that we've seen progress because we started to actively and effectively fund the HIV efforts. Here in New York, you saw the state go from being number 4 with the worst HIV incidence to trading with Georgia to take the slot of number 5, because even though we have a very high population, we started these new programs where as soon as you were diagnosed, that same day you would receive treatment, same day diagnosis, same day treatment. We got rid of these requirements for an actual AIDS diagnosis and said, well, if you have HIV, we're going to treat you so that you can get to undetectable, have a healthy life, and no longer be able to pass it on. And if you look at what's been going on in this way of both stigmatizing HIV and also acting as if it no longer matters or associating it with certain types of people and therefore saying they don't deserve treatment, you see the clear roadmap for defunding it. And Marrazzo has made very clear, no, that's not the game she's playing. She's in charge of every infectious disease and a response to it. And I think that given her work both in Alabama, where she was leading the institute down there at one of the best in the world, we can really trust her and take her at her word. And I think another perspective on this is Barry Sanusi, who of course won the Nobel Prize for being part of the team to identify HIV. She has consistently called on pharma companies to lower prices so that in case a legislator says, well, it's too expensive, she can say, well, not anymore. We made it so it's not expensive. So now you have no excuse. And I think that that's really one of the things that we're going to be focusing on, ensuring that the conversation is being put forward in front of scientists and researchers and saying, yes, you do a great job of researching, but you also have to step up and make sure that what you have created isn't then gouged to such a point that it is impossible to help the people it was intended to, it was created to help. From that perspective, we have to talk about the stigma. We know that PEPFAR is the most successful charitable organization, humanitarian organization in history, well, in modern history. And we saw that these rates of HIV were slashed because people suddenly had access to meds. And we also know that these meds are too expensive for people to afford on their own. And so it becomes a conversation where the US says that it has to reevaluate the way it allows pharma companies to run willy-nilly with pricing things out of reach. Are we a capitalist country that says you can do whatever you want? Or are we a country that says the good of mankind first? At which point pharma companies will say, well, then there's no reason for us to invest in these things. I don't think that that is the final point. I think that there's a happy in-between and a happy medium that Barry Sanusi has been calling for, which is you can still make money by pricing these things fairly, making them accessible to the people who need them most. And then we get back to your question. It is fair to tell people to put in their fair share of funding their own efforts. But I think that we then have to look at the way that European countries colonize these nations and the way that the US continues to interfere with them so that they're not able to actually make as much money as they would if they weren't adhering to certain rules. And some of the rules that have been put on people are, well, respect LGBTQ rights. And as someone who's gay, I agree with those rules entirely. But I'm sure there are certain leaders who would tell you that there's a cost for them to play by those rules. Maybe they don't receive funding from people who are in disagreement because they agree to abide by these. And so it's this tenuous relationship of, do you play ball with us and receive funding, or do you throw it out the window and take other funding that may not actually go to the HIV efforts that we want them to?